My name is Angela Morrison. I'm 49 years old. At 10:14 on a rainy Monday morning in November, my cousin stood in my grandmother's living room, pointed at the house deed on the attorney's desk, and called me a thief. Not quietly. Not in grief. In front of 12 relatives, 2 neighbors, the estate attorney, and my grandmother's framed wedding photograph. "You planned this," my cousin Rebecca said, her voice shaking with the kind of outrage people use when they have already decided facts are just obstacles. "You made Grandma leave you the house because you knew the rest of us needed money." The room smelled like old wood, coffee, raincoats, and the lavender sachets Grandma used to tuck into every drawer. Her blue armchair still sat beside the front window, the Afghan folded over the back exactly where I had left it 2 days before she died. The mantel held family photos going back 4 generations, baby pictures, graduation pictures, wedding pictures, Christmas mornings, people smiling inside a house they had not paid to keep standing. I sat on the sofa with my hands folded in my lap. My brother, Mark, leaned against the bookcase with his arms crossed. My Aunt Carol dabbed her eyes with a tissue she had not needed until the word house appeared. My Uncle Dennis stared at the floor. My younger cousin Tyler whispered something to his wife, who looked at me like I had personally emptied her wallet. The attorney, Mr. Samuel Keene, had just read the clause from Grandma's will. To my granddaughter, Angela Morrison, I leave my residence at 44 Maple Row, including all attached land, furnishings, household contents not otherwise designated, and maintenance account, in recognition of her years of care, stewardship, and financial responsibility for the property. That was all it took, 1 sentence. Years of casseroles, hospital visits, late-night calls, roof repairs, medication schedules, property taxes, and quiet bank transfers. Disappeared, under one accusation: greedy. That was the word my Aunt Carol used first. Rebecca chose thief. My brother chose betrayal. And everyone looked at me as if the house had fallen into my lap, instead of sitting on my shoulders for nearly a decade. I did not cry. I did not shout. I did not remind them that I had been the one changing Grandma's sheets when her hands shook too badly to hold the corners. I did not ask where they had been. When the furnace failed. When the porch rail rotted. When the cardiologist changed her medication. When she fell in the kitchen at 2 in the morning and called me because she knew I would answer. I just looked at the small brown ledger on Mr. Keene's desk and counted 7 seconds. What they didn't know was that Grandma had kept accounts. Not vague notes. Not sentimental memories. Accounts. Every bill I had paid for her. Every check I had written. Every family loan I had covered. Every utility shutoff I had prevented. Every mortgage payment I had quietly made for the same people now calling me greedy. And what they really did not know was that the house was not the only thing being read that morning. Grandma's final instructions said that if anyone contested my inheritance, Mr. Keene was to open the sealed envelope labeled Family Accounts and read it aloud. Rebecca was still talking when Mr. Keene reached for the envelope. This is that story. Before I tell you how my family learned that the woman they accused of stealing Grandma's house had been paying their bills for years, tell me where you are watching or listening from and what time it is there. I always wonder who hears stories like this while sitting with the memory of being called selfish by the very people who survived on their generosity. And if you connect with stories about women who were betrayed, underestimated, used, and quietly took their power back, like and subscribe to Ultimate Revenge. Some women do not defend themselves with speeches. Some women let the ledger speak. Grandma's house sat on Maple Row in Ashford, Pennsylvania, a white 2-story farmhouse with green shutters, a wraparound porch, a crooked brick walkway, and a sugar maple in the front yard that turned the whole street gold every October. It had belonged to my grandmother, Eleanor Morrison, for 58 years. She moved there as a young bride with my grandfather, Thomas, when the kitchen still had yellow linoleum and the upstairs bathroom pipes groaned like an old ship. They raised 3 children there, my father, Robert, my Aunt Carol, and my Uncle Dennis. Later, the house became the center of everything: Thanksgiving, Easter, Christmas Eve, graduation lunches, baby showers, funeral meals. Family meetings nobody admitted were ambushes until too late. Grandma believed a house remembered what people tried to rewrite. Walls hear more than mouths repeat. She used to say while dusting the photo frames in the hallway. She was not a soft woman in the way greeting cards like grandmothers to be. She was kind, but not easily manipulated. She baked peach cobbler, kept peppermints in her purse, and could cut through nonsense with one raised eyebrow. She had worked for 30 years as the office manager at a family medical practice, which meant she knew billing codes, insurance denials, payroll, human weakness, and the importance of writing things down. Her symbolic object in this story was a brown leather ledger. It had a brass clasp, thick cream pages, and her name written inside the cover in blue ink, Eleanor June Morrison. She kept that ledger in the bottom drawer of her roll-top desk. When I was little, I thought it was a diary. It was not. It was a record. Dr. Copay, April 3rd. Roof patch, West Side, paid by Angela. Carol electric bill, late notice, paid by Angela, do not mention unless necessary. Mark mortgage catch-up, 2 months, paid by Angela, claimed temporary. Rebecca dental emergency for Ethan, paid by Angela, no repayment. Dennis property tax penalty, paid by Angela, said he would repay by July, did not. At the time, I did not know most of those entries existed. I only knew the ledger mattered because Grandma touched it whenever someone used the phrase, family helps family. I was the oldest granddaughter. My father died when I was 34. And after that, Grandma and I became closer in the way grief sometimes ties two practical people together. My mother had already moved to Arizona by then with her second husband. My brother Mark lived 40 minutes away and visited when he needed tools, cash, or emotional credit. I lived 15 minutes from Grandma, worked as a payroll manager for a manufacturing company, and had no children. That last part became important to everyone else's understanding of my availability. Angela has time. Angela is good with bills. Angela doesn't mind. Angela can handle it. I was divorced at 39 after a marriage that ended not with scandal, but erosion. My ex-husband Paul was not cruel. He was simply absent in all the ways that turn a house cold. After he left, people said I was strong. They meant I had no excuse to need anything. By 40, I had become the family's emergency contact, unofficial accountant, errand runner, hospital driver, document finder, and quiet bank. I did not set out to be that. It happened the way these things happen. One yes at a time. The first large bill I paid was Grandma's furnace. It was January, 6 years before she died. The temperature had dropped to 12 degrees, and the old furnace in the basement began making a metal grinding sound that could not possibly be good. Grandma called my Uncle Dennis first because he lived closest and owned a truck. He said he would stop by after work. He did not. She called my Aunt Carol, who said she had a migraine. She called Mark, who said he was at his daughter's basketball game. At 9:15 that night, Grandma called me. "I hate to bother you," she said. That sentence always meant someone else had already failed her. I drove over in my winter coat and boots, found her sitting in the kitchen with 2 sweaters on, and called the emergency heating company. The repair technician arrived at 11:20. The furnace needed a new blower motor and wiring repair. The bill was $1,840. Grandma reached for her checkbook. I put my hand over hers. "I've got it." "No, you don't." "Yes, I do." "Angela." "Grandma, it's 12 degrees. She let me pay, but she wrote it in the ledger before I left. I saw her do it. "What are you writing?" She closed the book. The truth. The second bill was my Aunt Carol's electric. Carol was my father's sister, 63 at the time, dramatic in soft cardigans, and always between tight months. She had a pension from the school district, a paid-off car, and a mysterious ability to run out of money just before every utility deadline. She called Grandma crying because the electric company had left a shut-off notice. Grandma was recovering from a minor surgery then, so I went to Carol's house. The bill was $612. I paid it online while Carol cried at her kitchen table and said, "I'm so embarrassed." I said, "It happens." She said, "Please don't tell anyone." I did not. The third was Mark's mortgage. My brother was 45 then, married to a woman named Lisa, with 2 teenagers and a habit of spending money on boats he described as investments in family time. He called me one Friday night, voice low, "Ange, I need help." "How much?" He exhaled. $4,800. "For what?" "Mortgage catch-up. It got away from me." "How does a mortgage get away?" "Don't start." That phrase, "don't start." the family anthem of people who need money but not accountability. He said Lisa did not know. He said he would repay me after his bonus. He said the kids would be devastated if they had to move. He said he would never ask if it were not serious. I paid it. He never repaid me. The fourth was Rebecca's dental emergency for her son Ethan. Rebecca was my cousin, Aunt Carol's daughter, 38 then, a part-time yoga instructor and full-time expert in other people's selfishness. Her son cracked a tooth during a baseball game. Insurance would not cover all the repair. She called Grandma. Grandma called me. The bill was $1, $260. Rebecca hugged me afterward and said, "You're an angel." 6 months later, she told someone at Thanksgiving that I was cold with money because I asked whether she had submitted the reimbursement paperwork. The fifth was Uncle Dennis's property tax penalty. Dennis had inherited a small rental duplex from my grandfather's brother and somehow managed to spend its rent before paying its taxes every year. A lien notice came. Grandma was furious. Dennis cried. I paid $3, $900, to stop the penalty from escalating because Grandma's blood pressure had been high for 3 days. Dennis promised repayment by July. That July came and went like a polite lie. The pattern continued for years. Not always large amounts, sometimes groceries, sometimes prescription copays, sometimes car insurance, so a cousin could keep driving to work, sometimes tuition deposits, sometimes emergency plumbing, sometimes medical deductibles, sometimes funeral flowers that relatives signed their own names to after I paid the florist. I did not tell people, not because I was noble, because I was trained. In my family, helping quietly was virtue. Asking to be acknowledged was pride. Wanting repayment was greed. Setting boundaries was cruelty. Grandma saw it. More than once, she told me, "Angela, you are letting them make a habit out of your conscience." I would shrug. They need help. She would look at me over her glasses. Need is real. So is use. I did not always want to hear that. The house became my responsibility gradually. After Grandma's first fall, I started checking on her every evening. After her second, I installed grab bars. After her cardiologist warned about stairs, I moved her bedroom downstairs into the old sewing room. I arranged medications in a weekly organizer. I labeled freezer meals. I hired a lawn service after Uncle Dennis forgot to mow for 6 weeks. I paid the property taxes when Grandma's fixed income got squeezed by medical costs. I covered homeowners insurance when the premium rose. I replaced the porch steps after she tripped. The others visited, but I maintained. That is a different word. Visits bring flowers. Maintenance brings invoices. Every holiday, my relatives filled Grandma's house and acted like it existed through magic. They admired the porch lights I had paid to repair. They praised the warm dining room after I replaced the furnace. They took photos by the maple tree after I hired the arborist who saved it from disease. They ate meals cooked in a kitchen where I had paid for the new refrigerator. Then they left with leftovers. Grandma watched. She wrote things down. The first time she told me she was leaving me the house, I told her not to. It was 2 years before she died, on a Sunday afternoon in late September. The maple leaves had just begun turning. We sat on the porch drinking tea, the brown ledger closed on the small table between us. She said, "I changed my will." I looked at her. "Grandma, do not use that tone. I am old, not suggestible." "What did you do?" "I left you the house." I stood up so quickly my tea sloshed. "No." "Yes." "No, absolutely not." She looked annoyed. "It is my house." Everyone will lose their minds. They misplace those regularly. "I'm serious." "So am I." I paced the porch. "Grandma, leave it to all of us or sell it or put it in trust or something. I don't want them thinking I manipulated you. They already think what suits them. Please don't do this." She tapped the ledger. "Angela, who paid the property tax last year?" I did not answer. "Who replaced the porch rail?" "Grandma." "Who took me to the hospital when my heart went wild at 3 in the morning?" "That's not why I did it." "I know. That is why it matters." I sat back down slowly. She continued, "This house needs someone who loves it enough to pay for its roof when nobody is clapping. They love their memories here. You love the house itself." That sentence made me cry. Not loudly, not dramatically, just tears I could not stop. Grandma reached over and patted my hand. "Do not make yourself smaller to fit their idea of fairness." I said, "They'll call me greedy." She smiled without humor. "Then I will make sure the ledger is read." I thought she was joking. She was not. When Grandma's health declined that final year, the family appeared more often, not to help exactly, but to witness. People came to sit by her bed and say meaningful things while I changed laundry, tracked medication, and paid the hospice aide. Rebecca posted a photo of Grandma's hand in hers with the caption, "Treasuring every moment with our matriarch." She had stayed 22 minutes. Aunt Carol told church friends she was walking Mom home. She walked from the living room to the kitchen and asked me if there was more coffee. Mark came once with a grocery bag of pastries and said, "You should tell us if you need help." I handed him the pharmacy list. He said, "I meant generally." Grandma died on October 26th at 4:40 in the morning. I was sitting beside her bed in the downstairs sewing room, holding her hand. Rain tapped softly against the window. The hospice nurse had stepped into the kitchen to call the doctor. Grandma's breathing had become shallow, then softer, then something beyond breath. Her last clear words came the night before. "Ledger," she whispered. "I know where it is." "No," she said, eyes barely open. "Let them hear it." I swallowed. "I don't want a war." Her fingers tightened weakly around mine. "Truth is not war. It is inventory." Then she slept. By morning, she was gone. The funeral was held 4 days later at St. Mark's Methodist, where Grandma had organized the pantry for 37 years and once told a pastor his sermon on humility needed editing. The church was full. Everyone cried. Everyone told stories. Everyone said Grandma had been the heart of the family. I believed that. I also knew hearts do work nobody sees until they stop. After the burial, relatives gathered at the house. People moved through the rooms, touching furniture, opening cabinets, commenting on quilts, asking whether certain things had been promised. Grandma had not been in the ground 2 hours before Rebecca said, "I always loved this sideboard." I looked at her. She flushed. "I just mean, someday." I said, "Today is not someday." She avoided me the rest of the afternoon. The will reading was scheduled for November 6th at 10 in the morning at Grandma's house because Mr. Keene said she had requested it. She wanted the family in the place being discussed, he told me. Of course she did. Grandma liked context. That morning, rain fell hard enough to darken the porch boards. I arrived early to make coffee because some habits survive, even when they should not. Mr. Keene came at 9:30, carrying a leather briefcase and the brown ledger wrapped in a cloth. He placed both on Grandma's roll-top desk. "Are you ready?" he asked. "No." He nodded. "Good. Ready people sometimes misunderstand what is about to happen." Relatives began arriving at 9:45. Aunt Carol came in black wool and tears. Uncle Dennis came smelling faintly of tobacco. Mark and Lisa arrived together, whispering in the foyer. Rebecca came with Tyler and her husband, wearing the expression of a woman prepared to be wronged. A few cousins came because they thought there might be money. Grandma's neighbor, Mrs. Alvarez, came because Grandma had specifically named her as witness. Mrs. Alvarez was 81, sharp as a sewing needle, and had once chased a raccoon off the porch with a broom. At 10:07, we gathered in the living room. At 10:14, Mr. Keene read the house clause, and my family turned on me. Rebecca went first. "This is unbelievable." Aunt Carol whispered, "Angela, how could you?" I looked at her. How could I what? You knew Mom wasn't thinking clearly. Mr. Keene looked up. Eleanor was evaluated by her physician and by me during the revision. She was of sound mind. Carol ignored him. Mark said, "So you just get the whole house?" Uncle Dennis muttered, "Convenient." Rebecca stood. She planned this. She was always around Grandma, always controlling the appointments, the bills, the paperwork. We should have known. I looked at her. Known what? That you were setting us up. My chest tightened, but my voice stayed calm. "Rebecca, I was changing wound dressings and paying electricians." She laughed bitterly. "There it is, Saint Angela." Mark pushed away from the bookcase. "Don't act like you didn't want the house." I told her not to leave it to me. Sure. Aunt Carol cried harder. That house belongs to the family. Mr. Keene said, legally, it belonged to Eleanor. Now it belongs to Angela under the will. Rebecca pointed at me. Greedy. Then, louder. Thief! The word hung in the room. Mrs. Alvarez made a small sound of disgust. Mr. Keene removed his glasses, cleaned them slowly, and looked at Rebecca. Miss Porter, because you have alleged improper conduct regarding the inheritance, I am required by Eleanor's written instruction to open the sealed family accounts envelope. The room went still. Rebecca frowned. What? Mr. Keene reached into his briefcase and removed a cream envelope sealed with blue wax. Grandma had always loved dramatic stationery when practical consequences were involved. Across the front, in her handwriting, were the words, "Family accounts to be read if they accuse Angela." My mother was not there, but I heard her voice in my memory saying, "Oh, Lord." Mark straightened. Aunt Carol stopped crying. Rebecca's mouth opened slightly. Mr. Keene broke the seal. Inside were three things: a letter, a summary sheet, and copies of pages from the brown ledger. Mr. Keene looked at me first. Angela, Eleanor asked that I read this in full unless you object. Every eye turned toward me. Old instinct rose immediately. Protect them, soften it, say no, keep the peace. Then I remembered Grandma's last words. Truth is not war, it is inventory. I nodded. Read it. Mr. Keene unfolded the letter. My dear family, he began, reading Grandma's words in his careful attorney voice. If you are hearing this, then you have done exactly what I expected and accused Angela of taking what she earned by loving me when love became inconvenient. Aunt Carol closed her eyes. Mr. Keene continued, I am leaving Angela my house because she preserved it while many of you performed affection inside it. I do not write this to shame you, though shame may be appropriate. I write it because memory in this family has become very generous to those who did very little. Rebecca sat down. Mark looked at the floor. I kept accounts, Mr. Keene read, not because Angela asked me to, she never did. I kept them because some of you confuse her silence with having no cost. The house did not stay warm through sentiment. The taxes were not paid by nostalgia. The porch did not repair itself because someone posted a photograph under the maple tree. Mrs. Alvarez whispered, Amen. Mr. Keene picked up the summary sheet. The following amounts represent documented payments made by Angela Morrison on behalf of family members, household preservation, medical care, utilities, emergency debts, and property maintenance over the past 8 years. These do not include unpaid labor, daily care, transportation, meals, cleaning, medication management, or emotional endurance. The room did not breathe. Then he began reading. Furnace emergency repair, Eleanor Morrison residence, $1, $840, paid by Angela Morrison. Nobody moved. Property taxes, Eleanor Morrison residence, 6 years total contributions, $18, $760, paid by Angela Morrison. My brother looked up. Homeowners insurance shortfalls and premium increases, $7, $420. Aunt Carol pressed a tissue to her mouth. Porch rail replacement, step repair, accessibility modifications, $9, $630. Uncle Dennis shifted in his chair. Roof patch and later partial roof replacement contribution, $14, $200. I stared at the rug. I had never added it up. That was the first shock. Not their reactions. The total. Mr. Keene turned a page. Carol Porter, electric bill shutoff prevention, $612. Carol Porter, medical deductible, $1, $480. Carol Porter, car insurance reinstatement, $734. Total documented payments by Angela Morrison on behalf of Carol Porter, $2, $826. Aunt Carol whispered, Mom wrote that down? Mr. Keene did not answer, he continued. Mark Morrison, mortgage arrears, $4, $800. Mark Morrison, second mortgage arrears, $3, $200. Mark Morrison, emergency tuition payment for Olivia Morrison, $2, $500. Mark Morrison, personal loan described as temporary, $1, $700. Total documented payments by Angela Morrison on behalf of Mark Morrison, $12, 200. Lisa turned slowly toward my brother. Second mortgage arrears? Mark's face went gray. Lisa? She looked away from him. Mr. Keene continued. Rebecca Porter Mills. Dental emergency for Ethan Mills. $1, 260. Rebecca Porter Mills. Credit card payment to prevent collections notice. $2, 100. Rebecca Porter Mills. Summer camp deposit paid after check returned. $875. Total documented payments by Angela Morrison on behalf of Rebecca Porter Mills. $4, 235. Rebecca stood again. This is private. Mr. Keene looked at her. So was calling Angela a thief. She sat down. Dennis Morrison, property tax penalty and lien prevention, $3, 900. Dennis Morrison, plumbing emergency at rental duplex, $2, 450. Dennis Morrison, loan for truck repair, $1, 100. Total documented payments by Angela Morrison on behalf of Dennis Morrison, $7, 450. Uncle Dennis rubbed both hands over his face. The list continued. Smaller amounts, bigger amounts, cousins, utilities, medical bills, school fees, groceries, insurance, funeral flowers, emergency prescriptions. Aunt Carol's church retreat fee she had claimed was paid by, quote, a blessing. Mark's daughter's laptop after his card declined. Rebecca's bounce check fee for her son's orthodontist. Dennis's rental inspection penalty. A cousin's legal consultation. My own grandmother's hospice copays. By the time Mr. Keene reached the bottom, the total sat in the room like a second will. Documented direct payments by Angela Morrison over 8 years, $96, 814. Nobody spoke. Not one person. Rain hit the windows. The old house creaked. The ledger had done what I never could. It made generosity visible. Mr. Keene returned to Grandma's letter. If any of you believe Angela is greedy for accepting the house, please calculate what you owe her before calculating what you believe she owes you. If you believe she manipulated me, ask yourselves why she was the only one consistently present enough to do so. If you believe the house belongs to the family, remember that belonging requires more than memories. It requires responsibility. My throat tightened so hard I could barely breathe. Mr. Keene read the final paragraph. Angela, if they are hearing this, I am sorry. I tried to spare you, but I know them. Keep the house if you want it. Sell it if you need peace. Burn the old bills if you choose. But do not spend another year paying for people who call your love theft. Mr. Keene folded the letter. The room remained silent. Then Rebecca began crying. Not the soft, shocked tears of remorse. Angry tears. This is humiliating. I looked at her. Yes. She stared at me. That's all you have to say? I stood slowly. No, I have more. Every face lifted. For once they were waiting for me, not for a check, not for a ride, not for a solution, for words. I looked first at Aunt Carol. When I paid your electric bill, you asked me not to tell anyone. I didn't. Today you called me greedy. Her face crumpled. Angela. I looked at Mark. When I paid your mortgage, you told me your kids would lose their home. I paid it and never told Lisa. Today you accused me of wanting too much. Lisa stared at him with a pain I could not fix. I looked at Rebecca. When Ethan cracked his tooth, I paid the dentist before he left the chair because he was in pain. Today you called me a thief in front of the room where Grandma died. Rebecca looked down. I turned to Uncle Dennis. When your tax lien came, Grandma's blood pressure was so high I was afraid she'd stroke out from worry. I paid it. You muttered convenient when I inherited the house. Dennis whispered, I'm sorry. I did not respond yet. I looked around the living room. I did not pay those bills because I wanted control. I paid because I loved Grandma, and because all of you kept bringing your emergencies to the woman whose heart was already tired. I paid because I thought helping quietly was what decent people did. My voice shook once, then steadied. But I am done being quietly useful to people who loudly accuse me. No one moved. Mr. Keene sat very still, hands folded over Grandma's letter. I continued. I am keeping the house for now. Not because I stole it. Not because I tricked Grandma. Because she left it to me. and because I know exactly what it costs to keep it standing." Aunt Carol began sobbing. This time, I did not soften. "If anyone wants to contest the will, do it through an attorney. If anyone wants to repay me, Mr. Keene can provide instructions. If anyone wants to apologize, be specific. If anyone wants to call me greedy again, do it outside." That was the sentence that ended the meeting. Not officially, but spiritually. Mr. Keene gathered the papers. Mrs. Alvarez stood and came to me first. She took my face in both hands like I was still a girl, bringing tomatoes from Grandma's garden. "Your grandmother would be very proud," she said. I nearly broke then, but I did not. Not yet. I need to pause here for a second. If you have ever been called selfish by people who benefited from your silence, you know exactly what that room felt like. It was not about a house. It was about years of invisible labor, invisible money, and invisible pain finally becoming visible on paper. If this story is hitting close to home, leave a comment and tell me what moment made you stop funding your own disrespect. And if you have not already, subscribe to Ultimate Revenge. The quiet part is over. The aftermath began in the driveway. Family members left in clusters, as if walking alone would make them too accountable. Rebecca tried to leave first, but her husband Tyler stopped near the porch and turned to me. "Angela," he said, voice low, "I didn't know." "I know. I'm sorry." Rebecca hissed, "Tyler." He looked at her. "No, I'm sorry." That was the first apology, not from the person who owed it most, but clean enough to matter. Aunt Carol came next. Her face was blotchy, eyes swollen. She looked smaller than she had inside. "Angela, I shouldn't have said greedy." "No, you shouldn't have." She flinched. "I was upset." "Yes." I thought Mom had been unfair. She was accurate. Carol closed her eyes. "I don't know how to repay you. You can start by not making your embarrassment my responsibility." She looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. "That's fair." Mark avoided me until Lisa forced him back onto the porch. I could tell from her face that the car ride had already begun the next phase of his consequences. He shoved his hands in his pockets. I didn't think Grandma knew. That was his opening. Not "I'm sorry," not "thank you." I tilted my head. "That is what you're choosing first?" His mouth tightened. Lisa said, "Mark." He exhaled. "I'm sorry." "For what?" He looked annoyed for half a second. Then he saw my face. "For taking money and not paying it back. For letting you hide it from Lisa. For acting like you somehow took advantage when I took advantage." It was not beautiful. It was real enough to stand on. I nodded. "Thank you." Lisa looked at me with tears in her eyes. "I am sorry, too. I should have asked more questions." I said, "You were not the one calling me greedy." "No," she said, "but I benefited from not knowing." That sentence mattered more than she probably realized. Uncle Dennis did not apologize that day. He left without looking at me. Rebecca left angry. Carol left crying. Mark left exposed. And I stood on Grandma's porch while rain dripped from the gutters and the maple tree dropped wet leaves onto the walkway. When everyone was gone, I went back inside. The living room looked wrecked in a quiet way. Coffee cups on side tables, tissues on the rug, chairs pushed back, Grandma's Afghan slightly crooked. The house had held another family storm and survived. Mr. Keene was packing his briefcase. "I'm sorry," he said. "For what?" "For needing to read it." I looked at the brown ledger. She wanted it read. "Yes." "She knew them." He nodded. "She also knew you." That was when I finally cried. Not loud, not dramatic. Just one hand over my mouth, standing in the living room where my grandmother had taught me that truth had weight and memory needed backup. Mr. Keene quietly stepped into the hall and gave me the room. For the next 2 weeks, nobody knew how to talk to me. That was peaceful. I stayed at Grandma's house more than my own apartment, partly because there was paperwork to sort, partly because the house felt less lonely than expected. I cleaned one room at a time. Not to erase her, to understand what remained. In the kitchen, I found recipes clipped from newspapers and tucked into cookbooks. In the bedroom, I found handkerchiefs folded in a cigar box. In the attic, I found Christmas ornaments labeled by year. In the roll-top desk, beneath the ledger drawer, I found a letter addressed only to me, Angela. If you are reading this alone, good. That means the noise has passed for now. You will be tempted to turn the house into a monument or a punishment. Do neither. Let it be a house. Houses are meant to shelter the living, not trap them with the dead. If keeping it gives you roots, keep it. If selling it gives you air, sell it. You owe the family honesty. You do not owe them access. I love you. I saw you, Grandma. I sat at her desk for a long time with that letter in my lap. I saw you. Those 3 words did more for me than the house deed. Family pressure began after Thanksgiving. Aunt Carol called first. Angela, I was thinking maybe we could all still use the house for Christmas Eve. Mom would have wanted tradition. I was standing in Grandma's kitchen, wiping the inside of a cabinet. Carol, Grandma would have wanted people to stop treating her house like a hotel with emotional rights. Silence. That seems harsh. Yes, she sniffed. So Christmas is canceled. No Christmas Eve at this house is not available this year. Angela, I'm not hosting people who called me greedy 3 weeks ago. She went quiet. Then, surprisingly, she said, I understand. I did not know whether she did. But she did not argue. Mark called 2 days later. I want to start paying you back. I was skeptical. How? Monthly. $500 if I can. Can you? Lisa's voice came from the background. He can. I almost smiled. Fine. Mr. Keene can draft a repayment note if you want it formal. Mark sighed. Do we need to make everything legal? I said nothing. He said, right, okay. Legal is fine. That was growth. Small, annoyed, still growth. Rebecca did not call. She posted a quote online about how inheritance reveals people's true colors. Aunt Carol commented with a red heart. Then deleted it. Probably after thinking. Mrs. Alvarez printed the post and brought it to me because she said, I thought you might need evidence if she starts acting foolish. I loved that woman. The first actual repayment came from Tyler, Rebecca's husband. Not Rebecca. Tyler mailed a check for $1.260 with a note. For Ethan's dental bill. I should have asked who paid it then. Thank you for helping my son. I deposited it. Then I wrote a receipt and mailed it back because I am my grandmother's granddaughter. Rebecca texted 3 hours later. Did you seriously send Tyler a receipt? I replied, yes. She wrote, you're unbelievable. I replied, documented actually. She did not answer. The house changed in December. Without the family Christmas Eve gathering, it became quiet enough for me to hear what I wanted. I replaced the worn kitchen faucet. I had the chimney inspected. I moved Grandma's hospital bed out of the sewing room and cried as the rental company carried it away. Then I stood in the empty room and imagined sunlight, bookshelves, maybe a desk. A room does not stop being sacred because it changes purpose. On Christmas Eve, I did something I had not done in years. I cooked only what I wanted. Roast chicken instead of ham. Mashed potatoes with too much butter. Green beans. Grandma's cranberry relish, because tradition should be chosen, not demanded. I invited Mrs. Alvarez, my friend Nora, from work, and Lisa, who came without Mark because she said she needed a quiet night, and he needed to sit with his own discomfort. We ate at Grandma's dining table with the good candlesticks. At 8:30, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Uncle Dennis on the porch, holding a grocery store poinsettia. He looked embarrassed. I know you said no family Christmas. I said I was not hosting the family gathering. He nodded. I brought this, and this. He held out an envelope. Inside was $500 cash. I know it's not much. No, I said, it's not. He flinched, then nodded. I deserved that. You did. He looked past me into the warm hallway. I should have helped with the house. Yes. I should have repaid you. Yes. I should not have said convenient. I waited. His eyes filled. Mom loved this house. I loved that she kept it for us. But you kept it for her. That was the first time anyone said it correctly. I stepped aside. Come in for coffee, not dinner. He smiled faintly. Coffee is more than I deserve. Probably. Mrs. Alvarez liked him immediately after that because she respected a man who knew when he was barely admitted. In January, Mr. Keene held the formal accounting meeting. This one was different. Not everyone came. Rebecca refused. Aunt Carol came with a notebook. Mark came with Lisa. Dennis came alone. 2 cousins attended by video. Mr. Keene reviewed the estate assets, house valuation, maintenance account, outstanding taxes, personal property designations, and Grandma's written statements regarding my inheritance. Then he reviewed the family accounts ledger again, but this time not as a public correction, as a formal record. The total had grown slightly after Mr. Keene included receipts Grandma had clipped into envelopes. $101, $340 in documented payments, including house preservation and family debts. I sat quietly while the number was read. $101,340. Years of yes. Years of swallowing. Years of thinking each emergency was separate when the ledger knew better. Aunt Carol raised her hand like she was in school. Can repayment be made through the estate? Mr. Keene looked at her. The estate does not owe Angela those amounts. Individual family members do, morally and in some cases contractually if notes exist. Mark shifted. Carol nodded. I want to repay mine. I looked at her. She did not look away. Monthly, she said. It will take time. I nodded. Okay. Dennis agreed too. Mark already had. Rebecca sent a message through Tyler saying she disputed the characterization but would not contest the will. That was the closest she came to surrender. The public family reckoning happened at Easter. I had not planned one. I had planned to skip the holiday entirely, but Lisa asked if she could bring the kids to Grandma's house for a small meal because Olivia, my niece, missed the maple tree. Olivia was 17, old enough to understand more than the adults wanted, and young enough to still love traditions without knowing their cost. I said yes, but with rules. No Rebecca unless she apologized. No comments about ownership. No asking for items from the house. No financial conversations during dinner. No one enters closed rooms. Lisa said, "That all seems reasonable." Mark muttered something in the background. Lisa said, "Mark agrees." He probably did not, but he arrived on time with flowers and a check. Progress is not always pretty. Easter afternoon was clear and cool. The maple tree had tiny green leaves. I set the dining table with Grandma's blue plates, the ones she used every spring. Aunt Carol brought deviled eggs and handed me an envelope before taking off her coat. "First payment," she said. "Thank you." I also brought the electric bills from the past year. I looked at her. She swallowed. "I want help making a budget, not money, if you're willing." That was the first time she asked for help that was not a rescue. "I can do that," I said. Dennis fixed the porch screen without announcing it 3 times. Mark helped carry chairs and did not ask where Grandma's silver was. Olivia walked through the living room touching picture frames. "She really left it to you?" she asked me softly. "Yes." Dad said people were upset. "Yes." "Were you?" I looked around the room. "At first." "And now?" I thought about Grandma's letter. You owe the family honesty. You do not owe them access. Now I'm learning what belongs to me. Olivia nodded like that made perfect sense. Maybe at 17 it did. During dinner, Mark stood unexpectedly. Everyone froze. He held up both hands. "I'm not giving a speech." Aunt Carol said, "Good." He almost smiled. "I just want to say something in front of everybody, because I said other things in front of everybody." He looked at me. "Angela, I was wrong at the will reading. I was embarrassed and defensive and angry because I knew, somewhere, that I had taken from you and never made it right. You didn't steal the house. You earned Grandma's trust. I'm sorry." The room was quiet. Lisa looked proud and sad. I nodded. "Thank you." Aunt Carol wiped her eyes. "I'm sorry too," she said, "for calling you greedy, for making you carry what I was ashamed of, for letting Mom worry about me when she was the one who needed care." Dennis cleared his throat. "Same." Carol looked at him. "Dennis." He sighed. "I'm sorry for not showing up, and for taking money, and for acting like the house belonged equally to people who did not equally care for it." That was better. Then the front door opened. Rebecca walked in. No one had invited her. She wore a cream sweater, sunglasses pushed onto her head, and the tight expression of someone who had rehearsed dignity, but not humility. Tyler followed behind her, holding a pie. The room went still. Rebecca looked at me. "I know you said I couldn't come unless I apologized." I stood. Yes. Her eyes moved around the dining room, saw everyone watching, and for once seemed to understand that performance would not save her. She took a breath. "I am sorry I called you a thief." I waited. She swallowed. "I am sorry I called you greedy. I knew you helped with Ethan's dental bill. I knew you helped Mom sometimes. I didn't know everything, but I knew enough that I should have kept my mouth shut." Aunt Carol whispered, "Rebecca." Rebecca ignored her. "I was angry because I wanted the house sold. I wanted money. I told myself it was about fairness, but it was about wanting something from Grandma without asking what it cost to keep her here." Her voice cracked on the last word. "I'm sorry, Angela." It was not perfect, but it was the first time Rebecca had ever handed me the truth without wrapping it in blame. I nodded. "You can stay for dessert." Tyler looked relieved. Rebecca let out a shaky laugh. "Fair." After dinner, while everyone moved toward the porch, Rebecca stayed behind. "I can't repay it all right now," she said. "I know. I can pay back the dental bill over 3 months. The credit card payment will take longer." I looked at her. "You don't have to perform repayment today." "I'm not," she said quickly, then quieter. "I need to start, or I'll make excuses again." That I understood. "I'll have Mr. Keene send you the record." She nodded. "Thank you." The family did not become perfect. No family does, because a ledger gets read. But it became less comfortable for people to lie. That matters. When someone complained about a bill, they no longer looked automatically at me. When Aunt Carol needed help, she brought statements instead of tears. When Mark asked for advice, he began with, "I am not asking for money." When Rebecca posted online, she stayed away from quotes about betrayal, which I considered a public service. The house slowly became mine. That took longer than the deed. At first, I felt like a caretaker who had outlived the person I cared for. I kept everything where Grandma left it. Her mug by the stove, her slippers near the back door, her reading glasses on the side table, the brown ledger in the roll-top desk. Then, in May, I moved one chair. Just one. I took the stiff floral chair nobody liked from the corner of the living room and replaced it with my own blue reading chair from my apartment. It looked strange for a day, then it looked right. In June, I turned the downstairs sewing room into an office. I kept Grandma's old sewing machine by the window but added shelves, my desk, and a framed copy of her letter. "You owe the family honesty. You do not owe them access." In July, I planted rosemary by the kitchen steps. In August, I sold my apartment and moved into the house fully. That was the day I finally rang the doorbell from outside, walked in with my own boxes, and said aloud, "I live here." Not caretaking, not visiting, living. The brown ledger now sits on a shelf in my office, not hidden. I do not open it often. I do not need to. Its work is done. But sometimes, when I feel the old pull to rescue someone, before they have even asked properly, I look at it and remember the total, $101,340. That number is not a grudge. It is a boundary with arithmetic. On the first anniversary of Grandma's death, I hosted a small dinner at the house. Not everyone, only people who had learned how to enter without taking. Mrs. Alvarez came. Aunt Carol. Dennis. Mark and Lisa. Rebecca and Tyler. Olivia. Nora from work. We ate beef stew, cornbread, apple cake, and drank coffee in Grandma's blue cups. After dinner, Olivia asked if we could sit on the porch. So we did. The maple tree had turned gold again. Leaves drifted across the yard. The porch light warmed the steps. For a moment, the house felt full without feeling used. Rebecca sat beside me, quiet. Then she said, "Do you ever wish you had said no sooner?" I looked at the dark yard. Yes. What stopped you? I thought about all the reasons. Love, fear, training, pride, loneliness, the satisfaction of being needed, the terror of being called selfish. All of it, I said. She nodded. I'm trying to learn that needing help doesn't mean I get to take it from the nearest woman. I looked at her. That is a good lesson. She smiled faintly, painful. Most good ones are. Inside, Mark and Dennis were arguing mildly about whether the Pirates would ever become respectable again. Aunt Carol was helping Lisa pack leftovers. Mrs. Alvarez was telling Olivia that college boys were mostly unfinished furniture. Grandma would have loved that. The house did not heal the family. The truth did not erase the harm. The ledger did not give me back the years I spent believing generosity would eventually become belonging. But it changed the terms. I no longer had to prove that I had loved enough. The proof existed. In handwriting. In receipts. In paid bills. In repaired wood. In a warm house on a cold night. In the fact that Grandma spent her final years at home because I made sure the lights stayed on, the taxes were paid, the furnace worked, and the people who should have helped did not break her heart with their emergencies. My family called me greedy for keeping Grandma's house. Then they found out I had been paying their bills. And in the end, the house stayed with me not because I took more than my share, but because Grandma understood something everyone else forgot. Love is not measured by who cries loudest in the living room after the will is read. Sometimes love is the person quietly paying the bill before the lights go out. Thank you for staying with me through this story. I know some of you have been the quiet helper, the payer, the fixer, the one everyone calls responsible until responsibility finally cost them something. If Angela's story reached you, I hope you remember that your generosity does not erase your right to boundaries. Being useful is not the same as being valued, and you are allowed to stop rescuing people who repay you with accusation. Subscribe to Ultimate Revenge for more stories about quiet women, family betrayal, silent comebacks, and the proof that finally speaks from the ledger. So tell me, if your family called you greedy for accepting what you had quietly earned through years of sacrifice, would you defend yourself out loud, or would you let the accounts be read?